Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137. And here is your forecast for Friday, February 2nd and Saturday, February 3rd. Friday, mostly in the clouds with a chance of snow showers, possible snow accumulations of a trace to 2 inches, with a high falling to around 10 degrees. Winds will be northwest, shifting north at 15 to 30 miles per hour, increasing to 25 to 40 miles per hour, with a wind chill falling to 10 below to 20 below. Friday night, mostly in the clouds, trending towards clearing under partly cloudy skies. Slight chance of snow showers early. Possible snow accumulations of a trace to less than 1 inch, with a low in the upper single digits. Winds will be north at 25 to 40 miles per hour, with gusts up to 50 miles per hour. Wind chill falling to 15 below to 25 below. Saturday, in the clear under mostly sunny skies, with a high in the upper single digits. Winds will be north at 20 to 35 miles per hour, with gusts up to 45 miles per hour, with a wind chill rising to 10 below to 20 below.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
Right, Stomp, we are live, episode 138.
Crack that beer.
Cracking the beer. I got something to start the show I want to show you, Stomp.
Okay, what is that? Oh! Yeah, I can see it.
It is so frivolous.
He's showing me.
Yeah, it's an Avalanche brand butt sled for hiking.
Sweet. Have you used it yet?
I haven't. I'm going to take it up tomorrow and see how it goes. I've been trying to find these like Euro sleds, but I can't find a lot of them online. So,
what do the Euro sleds look like?
They're essentially like this, except for this part's. Yeah. This has a footrest part, but they're essentially just cut off. And
so Mike's sled looks like a figure eight with half of it a little smaller diameter for the feet, and then 2 handles to hold on to. That's cool.
Yeah, I read online, they said it's pretty good for smaller people, and I'm not a big guy, so I think it'd be okay. I don't know, Stomp, about you, though.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I usually just go right on my pants and my snow pants, and that's always been good.
Yeah. Andy, do you ever just get a sled and rip down the cog? You must have done that.
I've yet to do that. I've been tempted, but I've done butt sledding, hiking, and I did a season of snowmaking. So that's where I learned that putting some duct tape or tape like that on the ski pants can help you out with the coefficient of friction there. Yeah. You can get ripping.
Yeah. I did a little bit of butt sledding down Valley Way last weekend, which was good, but it's a lot of effort because you only go like 50 to 100 feet and then you got to get up again, and my core. I haven't been doing a lot of sit-ups, so it's hard.
Getting all banged up and bruised.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So, welcome to episode 138 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we are joined by Andy Vilaine. So, welcome, Andy.
Welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So, Andy is the train master for the Mount Washington Cog Railway. So, the railway has been open to the Mount Washington summit since 1869 and has been a rite of passage for generations of visitors to the Mount Washington Valley. So Andy's going to join us to talk about the history of the Mount Washington Cog Railway, the various events and activities available at the Cog, and then he'll share some details about the trains, the day-to-day operations, the maintenance of the track, and many other details. All this plus Stomp is shopping for a new backpack, so we'll talk a little bit more about some hiking gear. I'll do a recap on a recent hike to Mount Adams and Mount Madison. Stomp has had some snowmobile adventures, and we'll do a refresher on communication safety devices while hiking. And then we've got some recent incidents in the world of search and rescue. And then we got breaking news. Somebody drove a car through a pizza parlor down in Hudson, New Hampshire, Stomp. So we'll talk about that.
Nice.
So I'm Mike.
Drive-through pizza.
Yes.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
This is Ben Pease from Hiking Buddies. We are a 501c3 nonprofit committed to reducing avoidable tragedies through education, impactful projects, and fostering a community of support. You can find out more at hikingbuddies.org. We wanted to say thank you to those who have supported our mission, and most importantly, say thanks to those who speak up, who ask questions, and who are willing to provide guidance and assistance on the trails when needed. You embody what it means to be a hiking buddy. And now, for all my newer hikers out there, here's this episode's Hiking Buddies Quick Tip.
Get to know the parking area that you'll be going to before you head there for your hike. Note what the trailhead amenities are, if any. Know if there is a parking fee, latrines. Does it fill up early? What size is the lot? And is there an alternative for Plan B?
Let's get started. I wasn't going to put that story in, but I was like, well, mom and pops and dolls will be interested. So,
hey, it's hiking related.
Right.
People get pizza after a hike.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so just to start off with, Stomp, a listener, Paul Gamble, informed us that Guy Waterman has bushwhacked all of the 48 in winter. So I wasn't surprised to read this just because my understanding is that he bushwhacked each 48 4,000 footer from the what is that called? The like north, south, east, and west.
Oh yeah, okay, yep.
So, was there a reason why he reached out to tell us that, or was it just a fun fact?
Well, because we had talked about that, I had challenged a recent guest about that. I think it may have been Dave and Liz.
Okay,
and so it just tied into that conversation.
Yeah, if you were going to bushwhack Mount Washington, what direction would you go in, Stomp, in winter?
In winter, wow, that's a really good question. I think I suppose I would bushwhack from just what is the valley there, the head wall just south of Tuckerman's that people tend to go into.
Bootspur?
It's adjacent. Yeah, I'd probably go somewhere in that area where Glen Boulder is.
Yes.
And make my way up that way.
Gulf Slides, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I'd probably do something like that if it were not avalanche conditions. But it's a tough one. There's not very many. Or you could come in from the south, like isolation route.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's what I was thinking, is like maybe that dry river section there. But I mean, no matter what, I mean, you're in for a haul, and I don't even know how.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. Paul, if you're listening, and I'm sure this is in one of Guy's books, but I would be curious what direction he used to get onto Mount Washington.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and then
cool.
Next up, Stomp. I hope you have the answer to this, because I don't have the answer, but Cheswick. So Cheswick was a guest on our show. He's a through hiker. He had done some of the crazy long hikes. He had connected like the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail, and had done one continuous hike across that entire loop. I think it's called the Great Western Loop that he had done. So listeners had reached out and they wanted an update. So have you been checking out what's going on, Stomp?
Well, that's what spurred this on. Somebody had sent in a message saying, "What's the update on Cheswick?" And I have not heard anything about it, to be honest with you. So I did some digging on his pages, and there are no new updates that I can see. So if anybody out there knows some news about Cheswick, let us know. He joined us twice in the past, and those episodes are really fascinating, so worth a listen. But let us know if you hear anything. I've not personally heard anything, but maybe there is.
Sure. I mean, I'll just email him, see what he's up to.
Well, I sent him a text.
Oh, you did? Okay.
He didn't get back to me.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right.
So maybe he is in the middle of something.
All right. Cheswick is missing. We need to find him.
Yeah, MIA. Interesting.
All right, Stomp. Now I have one other thing. This is a very visual show, and we're a podcast and we don't do video, so I don't know why I keep doing this, but I got a new book. So Dave Shits in the Woods, who was on a couple of episodes ago, had recommended Shrouded Memories. So I started reading it, and they have Andy, there's actually a story in here, I haven't read it yet, about a shooting that happened in like the 1920s, 1930s. Mm-hmm. They say it was like at the Cog, but it wasn't really at the Cog. It looks like it was across the street closer to Zealand Campground. But I'm going to check that story out. But I did read the first chapter, which is about the plane crash, Stomp, that we've talked about before, that the two doctors in the 1950s, that were flying back and forth between like the southern part of the state. They were going up to Berlin. It was in like late 1959. It was the winter of 59, and they crashed in the Pemi by that Thoreau Trail there, on the back of the bonds there.
Okay. Yep. Sure.
So crazy story. So they had crashed in like these minus 10-degree weather. And unfortunately, like the rescue teams had been looking for them. They were flying. Civil Air Patrol was flying to look for them and couldn't find them. They did survive the crash for about 4 or 5 days, enough so that they could sort of write their families and attempt to light some fires and things like that. But they were one of them was severely injured during that crash and didn't survive long. And then the other doctor tried to make some snowshoes out of like bark on trees and things like that, but he couldn't get out. It was so thick. But they did find them eventually, I think a couple of months later.
Fascinating. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so far I'm impressed. So Shrouded Memories, and the author is Floyd Ramsey. So recommend that.
Awesome.
All right, Stomp is dealing with a new gear issue here, so he's going to retire his... You have a 30-liter low Alpine?
Yeah.
That's a small pack.
Yeah.
That's not your big pack.
No, I've got a low 90 that expands up to 115 that I use for winter. But I've been using my...
which is ridiculous. But so you're going to keep that one.
I'm going to keep that one, but I did a poll if whether or not I was going to get a new pack or not, and it was pretty much split 50-50, but yes, I am getting a new pack, and what I decided was I'm going to dedicate the old 30-liter to snowmobile sled guiding. First of all, it's a pain in the ass swapping out every season to get ready for the season, but I'm just going to keep it all in that 30 and use it for the guiding. And I've got a new low Alpine 65 in the mail coming my way.
And what is so this is this like your summer pack, or is... Because I always thought you just used your giant pack for everything.
I don't really roll like that. No, I don't. I used to swap out for the summers. I would use that 30 liter, which I'm going to dedicate to snowmobiling now.
Okay.
Which was a fairly small pack. But the 65 is going to be great. It's the happy medium for me. I like a big pack. I don't like having to rip everything out to get things. I like to look into it and see what I need immediately, just grab it. And I do pack a lot anyway. These 30s never really fit with my style, so the 65 should be nice.
I just have to laugh because like my winter backpacking pack is a 55 liter, and then my day pack is like a 25 liter. So Stomp's small pack is a 65 liter. So I don't know, Andy, are you a heavy packer when you go hiking, or are you?
Very, yeah. No, I can identify with that because I used to exclusively use a 75 for everything, even if it was a day hike.
Okay.
And I was stubborn about it to the point where my girlfriend encouraged me to get a second pack, and I wound up getting an Osprey Kestrel 38, I believe it is, for day hikes. But I do. My 75 is an old Yellow Bean White Mountain 75 from like the early 2000s, and I love it. But it's I definitely skew hiking heavy all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Stomp has he doesn't even think twice about throwing on like the 90 liter for a day hike, and it's fine for you though, Stomp. But is there a particular reason why you like these low packs?
Well, it speaks for itself. I mean, the two lows I have right now are running on probably close to 30, 40 years old now, and they're still killing it. I mean, they're just built really, really well. They've been around forever. So, yeah, I just tend to go back to the tried and true, the ones that have been historically tested.
Yeah, you don't see them around as much. I mean, you see a lot of like Osprey and Gregory and Deuter backpacks, but you don't see the low brand a lot. But I like your pack, Stomp. I like it because I can instantly recognize you.
Because it's as big as me.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like, is that two people walking?
Yeah. So Andy, if you hike with Stomp, if you need a kitchen sink, he'll have you covered.
That's perfect. I was looking I think I was looking at a 90 the other day at IME in the basement. I'm like, ooh, that looks kind of nice, and I caught some flack about that from my girlfriend. I was like, what do you need a 90 for? But I don't go light in any sense of the word. I'm like a pack mule out there, bigger guy. So I carry a lot, and I move at a slow but steady pace.
Well, you just have to tell her, look, I'm carrying everything for you as well, so you don't need to carry anything. And it's an investment for both of us.
She can pack, but I think because of my frame size, I can just I'm well suited to just be weighted down and have it not affect my stamina that much.
Yeah. And Stomp, do you, because I know like there's two trains of thought around like the backpack. Like there's a lot of people that will say go to a store to get it fitted. And it definitely makes sense, especially if you're not comfortable doing the adjustments yourself. But I've never really done that. I've just kind of bought the pack and then fiddled with it until it worked out for me. Are you going to do the same?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure this is 100% adjustable, and we all know how it works for the most part. Have it riding on your hips as opposed to your shoulders, and we'll tweak it and make it work.
All right. Well, listeners, if you're confident, then you can. I have a feeling it's more that just Stomp has no life, and he has like the 8 hours to fiddle with the pack. But if you don't have that free time, you can just go to any store and they'll help you fit your pack. But Stomp's an expert, apparently.
Oh boy!
All right, Stomp. So you want to do this story? So Stomp pulled a social media story about the Grand Canyon National Park Instagram page posted a picture of the Grand Canyon, and then it's like a Barbie doll,
right?
And it says like, I don't know why, there's no good can come of this. So
no kidding.
Ageless and fabulous, just like the Grand Canyon. Today, for Wanderlust Wednesday, Barbie trades her dream house for the breathtaking landscape of the Grand Canyon. And then it's like just Barbie doing one of those mid-air jumps that people do on social media. I think it looks fine. I think she looks good in the Grand Canyon.
Well, yeah, you got to read the comments, man. They savage this post.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't want to see Barbie. They want to see the mountains behind her, and they're all faded out. But, it just begs the question, like, these national park federal agencies, do they really need to use pop culture or political hot button issues to promote these things. It always ends up in disaster. It's so funny.
I love it. I think it's hilarious. I hope that whoever posted this, that's running the National Park Service Instagram, is just laughing at all these people that fly it up. But
that was one of the comments. One of the comments was like, I can't believe somebody got paid to post this.
I don't know. I think people should just have fun. Like, let people have fun. Barbie is fun. So.
I feel like a lot of the social media directors of entities like national parks and others, they just seem like they're towing that fine line between promoting and almost trolling the audience, and it makes for some pretty good content.
Yeah. Yeah, this one got a lot of reaction. It has a bunch of comments and likes and stuff. So it's it's great, Next time I go to the Grand Canyon Stomp, I'm going to bring my Barbie dolls. Post some pictures.
I'm pretty disturbed you have Barbie dolls, but you learned something new.
We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah.
All right. So, Stomp, have you ever heard of anybody getting stuck on a gondola? I've heard people getting stuck on like ski lifts, but not really a gondola.
No, not really. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I can't recall any stories.
So there was a story this week. This is in Heavenly. Where is this? Heavenly Mountain Resort. I'm not exactly sure. It's on the West Coast somewhere. Apparently, there was a lady that was skiing. She, for whatever reason, she was a snowboarder. And for whatever reason, she was on the top of the mountain right before closing time. And she had said she wasn't feeling good. She didn't want to snowboard down the mountain. Doesn't really say the details on what happened, but somehow a worker had allowed her to get on the gondola to go down to the bottom so that she didn't have to ski. But it was right at the 5 o'clock closing time. So apparently she went down in the gondola, not that far, only about 2 minutes. And these West Coast West Coast resorts are bigger, and they stopped the gondola. And she started screaming. Man. She's like, I'm still on the gondola. And nobody came. So she got stuck at 5 o'clock. And the gondolas, I don't think, started running until 8 o'clock the next morning. So she was in there for 15 hours in the freezing cold weather.
Holy moly.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a long, long time to be up there. I mean, it's not 100% exposed, but still, it's like...
Yeah, you're out of the wind.
Wow.
The chief operating officer had said that there was a breakdown in protocols and that they were doing an investigation to figure out what happened. But that's a little bit scary. I would assume that they would cycle through at least one time and have somebody checking to make sure that no one's in there. But
true. Yep, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Do you guys sweep the trains every night to make sure no one sneaks on?
In a way, yeah. One of my duties at the end of the night during the busy season when the trains are outside is to check them all, mostly to make sure they've been put to bed properly by the crew, but also to see if anyone's hanging around or snooping around anything, or going in the coaches at night. Haven't had anything like that. We've had a person try to spend the night in the station before, and had to take care of that, but I do check the trains nightly. This time of year, it's great because they park in the shop every night, so they're sort of secured in there. But when they're outside, I have to give them a once-over before I take off.
Yeah, that's pretty standard. Years ago, I worked at a car rental place, and we had protocols around checking all the buses before we put them to bed. So So anyway, all's well that ends well. She was a little traumatized, but she's good to go.
We all know that hiking a mountain can be hard at times. So here's a corny dad joke to help you get over it. Ba-dum-bum.
All right, Stomp. So this is the part of the show where we do a dad joke. Normally, I would be using my book that I got from my friends Lance and Camilla, but we're going to switch it up, and we're going to allow you to do the dad joke.
Oh, yeah. This is just a tribute to my Uncle James. He passed away 2 weeks ago due to a heart attack. It was like complete shock. And he was the self-proclaimed funniest man alive. He was always just joyful and just full of laughter. And at the wake, he actually had sent a dad joke to one of his granddaughters just before he passed. So he left behind this one final dad joke from Uncle James. So
when you found that out, you were like, immediately I have to do the dad joke on the show.
Oh, hell yeah. This is like the perfect sending off for Uncle James. So here it is. Why did the cell phone go to the dentist?
I give up.
'Cause it had a blue tooth.
All right. Well, Uncle James, we should have had him on the show before he passed. He would have been perfect.
I know, no kidding.
Yeah.
So there it is. Yeah, little dedication to my my late uncle.
All right. Well, thoughts and prayers with your family. I hope that they're doing well. Stomp sounds like a great
Appreciate
guy.
it. Oh, he was tremendous. Miss him dearly.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Fieldstone Kombucha, New England's premium craft kombucha company. If you're in the heart of New England, you need to drink a New England-style kombucha. Softer, less acidic, and truly enjoyable. Our kombucha is naturally effervescent and boasts full-bodied flavor. Fieldstone crafts the best seasonal flavors. When we tell you there's blueberries in our Baby Bandit flavor, it nearly turns your tongue blue. Women owned and operated. We brew in Rhode Island using whole, locally sourced ingredients. Fieldstone Kombucha is the perfect replenishing drink after a day on the slopes or a trek in the woods. It's chock full of probiotics and healthy acids to keep you in top form. Find us at Biederman's in Plymouth, Mad River Coffee House in Campton, the Concord Food Co-op, and more. Check out our website for the full list of New Hampshire and New England-wide locations. Use code SLASHER, SLASR, on our website for 10% off an online order, which is shipped straight to your door. FieldstoneKombuchaCo.com.
Hey, what's that sound? It must be time for the pop culture segment with Mike and Stomp.
All right, so now this is the part of the show where we talk a little bit of pop culture. We've got a film recommendation from our friend Stosh, who he's been on the show. He hosts the Catskills podcast, so we'll put a link to his show. So he recommends a movie called Safe and Found, which covers search and rescue.
That's right. So they use 3 stories to highlight search and rescue, and it was a documentary that premiered with a free screening last weekend at Haywood Community College. And the film's preventative search and rescue message is taught through these 3 stories and their first-hand accounts of trials and tribulations in the wilderness. And I'm quoting here, the real-life scenarios center on the top 3 situations hikers find themselves in: bad preparation, bad choices, and bad luck. So check it out. It's pretty decent. And thank you, Stosh, for the tip.
I haven't watched this yet. Is there a particular location where it's focused on?
I haven't watched it either.
Okay.
I'm just passing on the info.
Okay. Well,
it's I believe it's a lengthier documentary too. So
all right. Well, I'll check it out.
It's not like a quick YouTube video.
Okay. I'll check it out tonight. And then we don't have anything else for Pop Culture Stomp. I will tell you, I've got back into video games.
Really?
Yeah, my wife's not happy, but I got Hogwarts Legacy, the Harry Potter thing, and she's just like, what's going on down here? I'm in my man
That's
cave.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Where'd Mike go?
It's so confusing. There's so many buttons. I'm like, I just want to play Super Mario Brothers, but I've been spending about 45 minutes because I'm like, all I'm doing is just screwing around on my phone otherwise. So I was like, I might as well just do video games. So I spent about 45 minutes every night going through, like, they have these quests, and you have to, like, learn to cast these spells, and you run around the castle and stuff. So it's like, my wife thinks it's a midlife crisis. So.
Games are fun.
It is.
Mrs. Stomp and I play Beach Buggy on our old PlayStation, and I still have my Steam account. Steam's fantastic, great stuff out there. But it's a matter of finding the time. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, I don't know how you would like sit down and do this for like 5-6 hours like some of these young folks do. But my wife's not approving, so I just said, you need to let me have some fun, Mrs. Mike.
Yeah, that's cool. Yep. And the other thing about these games these days, I used to be into it too, but now it's so stressful. I get so amped up. I'm like, I can't play this game. I'm just going to get freaked out. Like at that time of my life where I'm trying to minimize my stress.
Yeah, I am noticing it's starting to get a little stressful, so I may toss the thing and just switch over to something easier. But anyway, anybody who plays Hogwarts Legacy and they want to send me a tip, that'd be great.
That's funny.
All right.
So get the old plugs coming. We have stickers available at Ski Fanatics off of Exit 28 in Campton, New Hampshire, or at Spinner's Pizza Pala in Andover, just off Dascombe Road in Massachusetts. If anybody's interested, we do offer advertising opportunities for the podcast if you want to get your thing plugged on the show. And we have our first sponsor here, Vaucluse Gear. Does your backpack not provide enough ventilation? Does your back sweat too much when backpacking? As you know, sweat can be extremely uncomfortable on the trails. Plus, sweat is a serious risk factor in both hot and cold climates. As your clothes get wet, your core temperature can dramatically fluctuate. This can result in hypothermia, heat exhaustion, and dehydration. Let's not forget, very uncomfortable. Today's your lucky day because we have good news for you. There's a piece of gear that solves the sweat and ventilation problem, making your backpack more comfortable. Vaucluse's ultralight backpack ventilation frame. This ultralight frame is a backpack accessory that easily installs in your favorite pack, size 15 liters to 45. I guess I'm out of the mix with my new 65 coming. And creates a ventilating airflow gap between you and your pack. It's also ultralight, weighing around 3 ounces. That's equivalent to a pair of wool socks. Whether hiking in hot or cold temps, the ultralight backpack ventilation frame from Vaucluse Gear is a real game changer regarding airflow and ventilation. Visit vauclusegear.com to order an ultralight ventilation frame today and use promo code SLASHER, SLASR, to enjoy a $5 discount and let them know that Mike and Stomp sent you.
Very good. I like my Vaucluse, so recommend it.
Yeah, me too. Yep. Oh, yeah, it's mine is attached to my ultralight for jogging and stuff like that. Excellent stuff.
Hey, hold my beer. It's time to find out what Mike and Stomp are drinking. On this week's Beer Talk.
All right, so this is the part of the show where we talk about what beer we're drinking. I don't know, Andy, you relaxing? You're not driving a train tonight, so do you have anything you want to share?
So I'm very much a square, and I don't drink, but I do have a main route going right now, which is about as close as I get to drinking.
Yeah, no. You would be surprised. Like I would say, like more than half our guests are not drinkers, so that's pretty common. Yeah.
I thought I was in a small minority.
No, a lot of people like they don't drink. Matter of fact, I spent like a long time like went away from it, but now I'm just my wife's yelling at me over video games, so I need a beer to calm down. But I'm drinking. It's called A Little Rain by Small Change Brewing. I don't know where they're located, Stomp.
Small Change.
Yeah, it's an American pale ale, so it's not bad. It's a little smoother than what I've been drinking lately.
Well, Mrs. Stomp grabbed me a classic. Sorry, guys, nothing new tonight, but it's a Pulp Daddy from Greater Good, Imperial Brewing Company, 8% Imperial IPA. It's a hazy, so yeah, nothing new on the IPA front tonight. But thank you, Mrs. Stomp, much appreciated.
Nice, and thank you for not yelling at Stomp. Appreciate it.
Exactly. Yeah. I knew we should have gone left back there.
Stomp, don't worry. I know it's this way. I've got a feeling in my gut.
Are you sure you're not about to have a bowel emergency?
Totally. We got this.
But I just blew out my hip. Fell down that gully with my 40-year-old microspikes.
Suck it up, Stomp. It's 4 p.m. We're at 3,500 feet. We got 9 miles back to the parking lot. Your leg may be broken. We got no cell connection, and we can't feel our fingers. But we're finishing all of my list tonight. By the way, I need some water. I'm empty.
I would if I could see what I'm doing, but my headlamp batteries are dead.
You gotta be kidding me. What a chump. This is the last time I hike with you.
Ha, whatever, mister. Do you know me? I have a podcast.
Whatever.
Let's find out what Mike and Stomp have been hiking.
All right, Stomp, this is the part of the show where we talk about recent hikes. So you haven't gone out and done anything, but you had an adventure on your snowmobile this weekend. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh, yeah. I was having a strong run without any incidents, and then I took out a tour of 6 sleds. 3 of them had young children on the back of the sleds, and then there was a couple on one sled, and then 2 others, and whatever. I think that math adds up. But we were at Little Deception Pond on Cherry Mountain Road. We were at a stop, and we were just taking pictures, and when it was time to go, I left, and a couple sleds left behind me, and then sure enough, about a quarter mile down the road, a snowmobile behind us zipped up to us fast and got my attention, and I came back, and literally from the start of where this one person on my tour started to 10 feet after, he had crashed into a tree, and I guess people behind him saw what happened. He caught a rut literally at the start when he started to move, freaked out, whiskey throttled it, as they say, and just hit a tree at maximum velocity and broke his leg, broke his tibia. I was assuming. I mean, holy moly. It was pretty wild, Mike. I've had crashes and things. I've had broken noses. I've had dislocated wrists. But this was a whole other level. And I'm still trying to process like my decisions and things like that. We don't have to get super deep into it. But ultimately, you can imagine there's 2 or 3 sleds a quarter mile up ahead. There are people behind. The kids were ahead. So you're trying to manage all these people that are somewhat dislocated from each other. Yeah. You've got somebody on the ground. The spouse was fine. There was no cell service. So, yeah, it was wild. But ultimately, we got him out. It was about 4 miles, and I made the call to get him on the back of my sled as opposed to calling 911, which would have taken a couple hours. I don't know. Yeah. But they were little kids. I mean, we just couldn't really do that. And he was alert and oriented. You couldn't really 100% screen him for head injury or spinal, but he was moving his head, moving his arms, and yeah, man, heavy duty. Go ahead. You got a question?
Well, so then did you have to go over Jefferson Notch Road to get back?
No. So Cherry Mountain Road, which is on the eastern side of Mount Martha and Owl's Head, is a low elevation. It's probably maybe 6 miles in length total. So from where we were, it was maybe 3 to 4 miles to get back to Route 302. And then from there, he just jumped into his spouse's car, and they drove off to, one of the local hospitals. I don't want to reveal that. But
you guys just get the sled at some later point?
Dude, yeah, it was absolutely total. So we had to drag it out, and yeah, it was a mess. But one thing, I approached guiding up until this weekend with sort of a hiker's mentality, and I would pack as if I was ready or prepared to, say, make a splint out of like ace wrap or make a tourniquet out of fabric and a stick and whatever else. But after this weekend, I decided to harden all those things. So I purchased legit like rhino tourniquets, real slings, and all that stuff. Because it's just a matter of time before something like that happens where somebody needs like legit care, as opposed to...
Yeah, you're not going to get the lower leg injuries necessarily like you do in hiking. You're going to get concussions and shoulders and arms, and you'll get some of those injuries where people are pinned against a tree. So it's
or a tree has ruptured somebody's femoral artery. I mean, it's not a joke. So it was I guess it was a sort of a I don't want to say it's a wake up call. I knew that was a possibility, but I was compelled to really up my gear just to make it easier on me should that happen. I don't think it's the place for the hiker approach to some of these potential injuries, that's for sure. So anyway,
do you guys
all's well that ends well?
Do you test out the users to say okay, go drive up and down the road so we can see if you're I guess you probably
we do that together as a group, and how people are. Before we even go, I interview them and screen them, have you ridden? I'm going to place you here. I'm going to place you there. And within the first 5 minutes, if somebody is, fairly adept at it or not. And you can change things up as you go. But honestly, it was the end of the tour. We had been out for 2 hours already, and this one individual was a great rider. He was fine. He just... I don't know. The reflexes took over. Yeah. And he just flew off the trail, hit a tree.
Are those the throttles? Are they the thumb throttles? It's been years since I've driven those things.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And you're supposed to only use your thumb, because if you're manhandling it with your entire hand, you're going to get in trouble for sure, especially when you're taking a left turn. It's on the right, so you're taking a left turn, and inevitably people get into trouble and they panic and they press the whole thing and end up in the river or wherever. So, yeah.
All right. Well, nice job, Stomp. Well, I had a much better day than you did on Saturday, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Tell us about it. I saw some pics.
Yes, I did. I hiked Madison and Adams. And Andy, have you been up? You've been up above the clouds this week? Have you?
Yeah.
This week's been unbelievable, right?
Oh, just a crazy string of days with an undercast. It's just one of the longest chains of days I can remember where it's been like that.
Yeah. I just saw some pictures of somebody that was out, I think today or yesterday. It's been unbelievable. So I went out with. We had a group of, originally me and my friend Steve were going to hike the Wildcats, and then we heard back from Nick, our friend Nick, and he had said he was going to hike Madison and Adams with a friend. So I just offered to Steve. Steve immediately was like, yeah, let's bail on Wildcats and just go to the Prezi. So we didn't know. We were kind of yeah, maybe we'll get some views, we'll get some peaks, but we didn't expect what we ran into. So it was pretty uneventful to get up Valley Way. A lot of people in the parking lot. I saw probably saw 5 people I knew. There was a couple of different groups, but there was Littlefoot and her grandparents were heading up the Valley Way. So we saw, wherever we went, we kept seeing people we knew. So that was fun. But it also wasn't super crowded. It was just different groups. But we got to Madison Springs, and the clouds were just burning off, and we got to the hut.
So great.
And I looked around. I was like, "It's happening." I'm like, "There's going to be a good, good views here." But I didn't realize how insane the undercast was, because you can't really tell when you're at that hut. But we got up halfway up Madison, and I looked behind me, and there was a white rainbow.
Wow.
Which I'd never seen before.
That's cool.
So I got some shots of they call it a fog bow or a white rainbow. And then Mount Washington looked like just a little island surrounded by the clouds. And luckily, one of the guys we hike with, Nick, is a photographer, so he had his nice camera, so he got a bunch of really cool shots.
Epic.
Yeah. So, and Madison was amazing. And then we got back down to the hut. Littlefoot was coming up, so her and her crew were heading up to Madison, and then we decided to go up Star Lake, which wasn't broken out, so we got a little bit over by Star Lake, and then we were mostly just staying on top of the crust, but we started sinking in, so we put snowshoes on and then made our way across the lower snowfield on Star Lake. And that trail, I don't know, Stomp, if you've been on there in the winter, but it's nice, but it's like you're going up, but you're going at an angle, so you're kind of falling down the whole time. So it's a little exposed, so it's not the most comfortable trail.
Yeah, that's a challenging trail. How'd you do at the top there where you got to do those scrambles?
So Steve was leading, I was sweeping, and Steve was like going over to the left to try to find an approach, because the only way up that I was looking at was like a chimney that didn't look safe at all, but I ended up just going up it. And then Steve and Nick and Mike went around, and I think they found the easier spot.
Yeah.
So, but it was good. It was good. It was a little chilly when we got on Adams. Then we went back down the airline, saw a bunch of people coming up, but like the views were just insane.
Yeah, incredible pictures. So that brings you to what on your Winter 48 list?
Well, I'd already done all those, so I'm at 43, so I've got 5 more to go.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
all right.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I'll get it either later in February or in March. I'll finish up.
Oh, should we tell the listeners the news about the dinner? AMC dinner?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. We were invited to have a table at the AMC Awards this spring. So we'll be kicking around. And here's the funny thing about this. I got to get both you guys' your opinion on this. I got the email, and immediately I'm like, oh, yeah, let me check with Mike and see what happens. And they're talking with Mike, and Mike's like, yeah, that's great. And then all of a sudden I realize it's my wedding anniversary. So I asked Mrs. Stomp if it's... I presented it like, well, I can't really do this. It's our anniversary. And then she wrote back and said, oh, I don't mind.
What anniversary will it be?
Yeah, wedding anniversary.
What year?
Yeah.
Oh, like how many years?
Oh, my goodness. You had to ask 11? Yeah, 11.
You can skip it.
So
I would say if it was the 10th, maybe not a good move, but 11th?
Yeah, it's not a milestone.
Yeah.
And you presented it really well. You gave her the first right of refusal, so I think that was...
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And I meant that right. I was like, well, Mike's got it covered. He doesn't need me.
Well, I also think like if
he's the popular one anyway.
Oh, please. I wonder though, is it is the dinner on a weekday or is it a weeknight or weekend?
That would be a Saturday night, I think.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. It's I could pull it up if you want. It's in April. So it's April 20th. Saturday, April 20th.
Okay.
Yeah, so pencil it in, people.
It's time for Slasher's Notable Hike of the Week. If you want to be considered for the Hike of the Week, simply tag Slasher on your social media post.
All right, Stomp. So this is the part of the show where we do the notable listener hikes, and then Andy, you're going to be up soon.
All right.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so if you want to tag Slasher on your adventure to be considered for Slasher's Hike of the Week, do so, and hopefully we will get to you. Some weeks we're floored and we just don't have enough time to put them all in, but this week we have 4. So Littlefoot, you just mentioned, finished her 3rd round of New Hampshire 48 on Madison and Adams. Pretty amazing. I didn't know that was her 3rd round. Yeah. Holy moly, what a machine. Rob MCC 85 did North and South Kinsman, and that was 11 and 12 out of the Winter 48. Nice work. And then Veterans on the 48 tagged us. They had a trip out to, and I got to hand it to them, this is not an easy trip. They did Mount Willie from the Willie side, from lower down, not from Tom and Field. So they did an out and back. They did all the ladders, and that's a hell of a trail.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Hell of a trail. So that's intense. And then our man Dave, Shits in the Woods, did Mount Wolf, and this was 99 out of the 104 New Hampshire highest 100. And I read the review, and that's pretty intense. It's funny. I go to work up over Lost River, and I always look at that trail to see if it's broken out, and that's the Kinsman Ridge Trail. Yeah. So if you start at Lost River, Beaver Brook Pond, you can go several miles in to get to Mount Wolf, and sure enough, I saw somebody broke it out on the way back from work later one day, and I'm assuming it was him. But that's a hell of a trip.
Yeah, nobody goes out there.
He broke trail. Yeah, nobody. Yeah. So I don't know, Mike.
Immediately, no, he doesn't get it. Veterans on the 48 gets it from Mount Willie. So Andy, I'm not being mean, but we know Dave, and we are now never going to give him the award because we think it's funny.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm on the fence, but I guess you're right, Mike.
Yeah. Nope. Stay strong, Stomp.
Okay. Will do.
He'll probably keep putting in for it, though.
He will. He's got to keep going. That might be the one way he win if he stops sending him in, but we won't tell him that. So
Yeah.
It's time for Slasher's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool.
All right, Andy, so this is your segment, so thanks for joining us again. So, again, for the listeners, so Andy is the train master of the Mount Washington Cog Railway. So what does that entail? I'm assuming you're in charge of all the operations of the train and track system for the railway?
Yeah, it's like an operations manager. So I have oversight of the train crews, the train movements, safety, rule adherence, scheduling, and then got to work in between departments with the shop to coordinate, make sure we have enough trains available, substitutions. So it's like a day-to-day operations manager. I work pretty close with the general manager to make sure things are running smoothly and to interface between departments to get that done, which there's quite a bit to do in all times of the year. Busy season, we see close to 2,000 people a day on a busy day. And then this time of year, we're not seeing ridership like that, but there's a lot of other things to contend with weather-wise that keep us busy for sure.
Wow. And then can you talk a little bit about your early life? Are you a New Hampshire resident, or what were you like always a sort of an outdoor person?
I hate to admit it, but I'm actually a transplanted masshole. And,
okay. All right. I'm with you.
Right?
Me too.
I grew up in Massachusetts, but coming up here, my dad was instrumental in kind of fostering my love for the outdoors, because our summer vacations were frequently coming up to the White Mountains, camping, and exploring the wild spaces up here. So I kind of got that bug early. And I think through repeated visits to this area, I had this idea in the back of my mind that I always wanted to relocate and live there one day, but I didn't know if I could really make it happen. Didn't know if the time was right. So didn't wind up actually putting that through and actualizing that until 2015, when I actually kind of reset my whole life to come work at the Cog. And that was going to be the catalyst for me. Moving up to the White Mountains was going to be actually to apply and get my foot in the door working as a brakeman at the Cog Railway, and came from a pretty different background. I was working, was the head of security of a couple different music venues in the Boston area. And I was one of those train kids. I grew up with a train affinity from a young age.
Okay.
Just being fascinated
by them. So I think the marrying of trains with the White Mountains and kind of putting that all together just really appealed to me. So when I finally pulled that trigger and made the move, I've been so happy to actually be able to kind of live the dream and have this beautiful natural playground in my backyard.
Wow. So you moved up a little less than 10 years ago. You just basically got your foot in the door and worked your way up.
Yeah, I started just our brakemen are kind of a combination between a safety person on the coach and a conductor. They will interface with the guests, and they're also a tour guide element as well, where there'll be a narrative that goes on the trip. And that's what I started doing. And I always wanted to learn a little more as I went, pick up what I could and learn from the guys that have been there. And I just kind of started integrating different job duties and titles, and eventually wound up working into the role that I have today.
Wow. And then it sounds like you do a fair amount of hiking as well in the area.
Yeah, I like to. That's number one thing I like to do when I have off time. I like getting out solo. My girlfriend and I get out, do a lot. She works for the state at the summit, so we actually met through the railway, which is kind of a nice, cheesy Mount Washington love story.
Okay.
And she's into hiking as well, so we like to get out together. And I'm a big fan of trails like the Terrifying 25. That's one I'm working on right now, that list, to try to hit all of those.
Let me ask you about the Terrifying 25, because you're in a unique situation. So the rules on the Terrifying 25, like you could, in theory, take the cog up and then hike down Sphinx. Do you do that, or do you choose to start from the lower trailheads for all of them?
I haven't done that yet. I like to sort of start natural. I did probably my favorite one that I've done where I got close to the train was when I did Great Gulf.
Oh, yeah.
And I come up and, of course, I see the train passing the Gulf Side Trail there. And I'm thinking, well, I could, I'm done with the trail now. I could jump on the train and ride to the summit. Yeah. But because I've done the portion of the trail, I've done Mount Washington enough times now that I don't need that to count for anything. So I thought about it and I said, no, I'm going to complete the hike and use my own two legs to get me there. The one thing I did when I did a bushwhack of Burt's Ravine, I used the train to get me up, and then I actually wound up not super proud of this now, looking back on it, because I wound up bushwhacking the Alpine Zone in shoulder season-ish conditions. It wasn't adequate snow coverage, but I bushwhacked down into Burt's Ravine and then out through Clay Brook and back to the Cog, and that I did take the train up to get the approach to that. But otherwise, I like to get myself in and out.
Yeah, what's it like inside Burt Ravine? I'm always curious about that. Do you think a lot of people travel in there, or is it pretty? It must be pretty sparse.
I'm thinking it's one of the sparsest. I mean, it's a bushwhack that's pretty gnarly because of the avalanche that happened through there a little over 10 years ago, I think it was. And the trees are just strewn in such a way that it's a tightly woven sort of under canopy that you have to work over, under, around, and through. Really wild down there, lots of waterfalls, lots of rugged terrain. Destroyed a pair of boots on that bushwhack that they were reasonable going into it, and they were totally trashed coming out. And it was an interesting perspective being down there at the very bottom of the ravine and seeing, it was in 2017 I did it, so there was a new washout scar that had formed from the big October Halloween flooding rainstorm in 2017 that we had there. Yeah. And I think that's a new slide that people even ski now. It sort of comes from up around the just below the Jacob's Ladder halfway house area of the Cog and goes down into Burt's. Okay. It's a pretty narrow but skiable scar that I guess people do. But yeah, I didn't see a soul down there. Just saw a couple of ski poles because people will ski it, but it was gorgeous to be down in there and have kind of that unique perspective of being in a ravine that no one really travels through.
Yeah, Stomp, you should put that on your list. And for the listeners, if you're not sure what we're talking about, so Burt Ravine is essentially, it's the ravine that is between the Cog and the Jewel Trail. So there is a couple of sections, like if you're hiking down the Cog, like there is one no-slip zone where you don't want to slip because you will fall into that ravine. But in general, it's a pretty thick area, but it sounds like there's some slides that have openings. So that's pretty interesting that you've gone in there. I mean, it makes sense. Like it's an area that you're around a lot. So great. So as you've worked your way up into this train master position, can you? I mean, I've done a couple of segments about the early history of the Mount Washington Cog Railway. Can you talk a little bit about your knowledge of the early history, so I can tell the listeners? So the construction began in 1866. It was completed. There was a significant completion up to Jacob's Ladder in 1868, and then full completion in 1869 up to the summit. The person that was the driving force behind the Cog Railway is Sylvester Marsh, who was quite a character. I think he was a Massachusetts native that went between Chicago and New Hampshire And, he's got an interesting story, but how much of a historian are you of the Cog?
I like to dive pretty deep into it. So I love history. I love railroad history in particular. And the Cog has such an interesting story because of Marsh. And like you said, quite a character, one that was very highly doubted when he came up with this whole idea for the railway. He actually was a New Hampshire native. He was born in Campton in 1803. And he wound up moving to Boston after a while. I believe when he was 19, he moved to Boston. He had a farming upbringing, and he wound up accumulating a fair amount of wealth in his life through inventions and patents that he had issued for things like a grain dryer, and he worked in the meat packing provisions industry as well. That led him out to Chicago. I think he made the bulk of his money out there in the Chicago area.
Yeah, I think he was like one of the early founders. I think he was in Chicago when there was only like maybe a couple hundred people living out there, right?
Yeah, he was, in the infancy of that, sort of booming into to become the city that it would be. He was a well-known and respected kind of business mogul out there in its early days. Kind of started as a big fish in what was a small pond, and then quickly exploded.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. I think the other thing that I've read about him is that he invented some form of the coffee percolator. I've read.
I did see something about that. He had quite a few inventions that were sort of totally unrelated to the railway, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. They hear about the Marsh story and they hear about the Cog, and they assume here's a railroad man, or here's a person that was a railway executive or something like that. And he really had nothing to do with rail travel prior to this whole Cog development. And his inventions were in other arenas.
Yeah. I think he was like a cattle baron or something out there. But and you were telling us before we recorded the show that we had our dates a little bit off, but the motivation behind the railway was he had done a hike up Mount Washington in 1857, and he had gotten, I think, lost a little bit, but did make his way up to the summit, right?
He did, yeah. The hike was in August of 1857, and he wasn't alone. He was with his pastor from the Boston area, Augustus Thompson, and they ascended, I believe, via the Crawford Path, but I could be wrong on that. There's sketchy information about his route that he took, but he was going up, and the conditions deteriorated rapidly, as they often do, and found freezing rain, high winds, poor visibility, and at one point they were really questioning whether or not they were going to be able to make it, and rather than heed all intelligent decision-making and turn back, they were already above tree line at this point, so they figured pressing on would be best, as he knew he could seek some form of shelter should they reach the summit, with the tip-top house being there, but narrowly made it with their lives. He nearly became another early statistic on the mountain in terms of the extensive fatality list there.
Wow. And that, do you think that, well, we don't know for certain, but do you think that motivated him to start his sort of obsession with the mountain and the idea around building the Cog Railway?
Yeah, there was a quote that's attributed to him when they did finally get there and got to safety and spent that night at the tip-top house, that there's got to be some easier and safety method of ascension of the mountain. And he kind of, being a businessman, he saw the potential in sort of having a tourist attraction that could reach safely the highest peak in New England. And there was sort of that burgeoning tourism economy in the White Mountains, even at that time, with folks coming up from the cities looking for an escape from what was becoming a more cramped and industrial way of life. So he wanted to kind of...
Yeah, and there was a lot of grand hotels that were popping up and a lot of tourism. So he had gone to the state about a year later and had gotten skeptical approval, I think, from the state legislature around like, okay, you can get the permit to build this. So I'm assuming some way he was able to convince the state to give him the access to that land and purchase the easement to build the Cog Railway. But I think there was a lot of skepticism about whether he could actually make it happen, right?
Absolutely, yeah. The whole remark that was made was that Marsh may as well build a railway to the moon. So sometimes the sort of half-joking moniker that we bear is the railway to the moon, hearkening back to that. They called him Crazy Marsh in the local newspapers of the time, and locals just discussing the notion. It never been attempted anywhere in the world, a mountain climbing railway, so the whole idea was kind of foreign and kind of crazy to most that would hear about it. And I guess that the granting of the charter that the state did was on the grounds of the phrase was, what harm could be done? Either he'll succeed and the benefits are guaranteed, it'll be a boost to the tourism economy, or he'll fail and he'll be out only his own money because he was going to put forth and bankroll his own operation to get it started with $5,000 of his own funds, which, fair amount of money back then.
Yeah, and he did fund it himself. Primarily, he did fund it himself, at least in the beginning, but there was some delays. So he started, he got the approval in 1858, and I don't think that did they not start construction, I don't think, until like 5 or 6 years later, right?
Yeah, they paused for the Civil War and some other delays. They're scouting a route and securing land and so forth. And then, of course, the Civil War breaking out put things on quite the hold. So nothing really got moving truly until May of 1866.
Got it, yeah. And then he pretty rapidly was able to build out the tracks. The technology behind a cog railway, can you explain exactly what that is? So a cog railway is specifically designed for climbing, but can you explain the technology behind that?
Sure. So typically on a mainline railway, you have two rails on the outside, and the wheels of the train are driven to friction drive essentially off of those rails. On a cog railway, all the drive is through a gear in the center going into you could think of it as a third rail, but it's called a rack, and it's mounted right down the middle of the tracks. And it's those gears, those toothed gears, or those pinions that are driven, that interlock with spools in the rack to propel the train forward and up. And it works great for climbing a grade. It had been used in other applications prior to Marsh's design, primarily in mining and things like that. And his was to be the first application of that technology to actually climb a mountain. There had been funiculars that existed before, which would be like a cable-driven railway that would wind and pull something up. And he did sort of explore the feasibility of that from Mount Washington and discovered that there was too great of a elevation change, too many changing angles. He'd have to have several different cable winds and things like this. And that's when he sort of went to the design of the propelled gear-driven trains.
And then the engines are tilted somewhat upward so that when you do the climb, they're more level to the plane that they're ascending, correct?
Correct. Yeah, our average grade is right around 25%. So on our steam locomotives, we match that pitch on the boiler so that these are fire tube boilers, and you're ensuring that there's proper water coverage across that tube bundle inside, as long as the crew is maintaining the right water level relative to the portion of the track they're at. Our diesel locomotives have the use of a John Deere engine that has primarily been used as like a genset application in marine types of applications. So it's well suited to operate on a grade, has a real deep oil pickup in the oil pan. And it's a motor that can withstand, changing of pitches and things like this because of its primary application. So it's actually, in a way, it's a reduction way to put it, but it is a boat engine essentially in a train locomotive.
Wow. And then so he was able to build up to Jacob's Ladder in 1868, and then he needed another year to get full completion. How many trains did he have running when he got to the summit to start with?
So just one in the very early going, and that was the original locomotive, Old Peppersass, which we still have on display at the base as kind of a reminder of the history. And it's a very awkward-looking locomotive. It has no enclosed cab, a vertical boiler that's mounted on these trunnions, so it could actually swivel as it went up the mountain and self-correct it on the grade. And that was a wood-fired locomotive. And it had a top speed of a whole 1.5 miles an hour, so it was a slow plodding journey those days to actually get up. But it was a wild ride. The earliest cars were completely open. People were exposed to the elements, and very much a highly seasonal operation in those days.
Yeah. What do you think the environment was for the people working on the tracks to build it? Do you have any sense of, I'm assuming they lived close to the station and, probably had to deal with a lot of rough weather, but is there any sort of history that's tracked around that I guess the experience that those construction people went through?
Yeah, there's a little. There's not a lot of documentation of direct stories, but there's understandings and some compiled history on it. There was a lot of lodging. The Cog Railway actually has a long-standing history of lodging at the base for workers that sort of began with that initial construction crew, and really that lasted until the mid-2000s, where a lot of the workers were actually living on base. But those early workers, I mean, there's a lot of stories out there from that period, sort of contemporary to that would have been the Transcontinental Railroad being completed in the western part of the country. But railroad workers, it was not a glorified job. It was hard, dirty, often dangerous work. And now you're taking all the dangers and the hard, laborious tasks that come with any railroad work, and now you're saying, okay, now you're going to build a railway on the side of a mountain that bears the world's worst weather, and now you have to contend with that on top of all the other issues that come with that form of really trying labor.
Yeah, but you do have to imagine too, like in that period of American history, the amount of rail building that was going on, even though the environment's difficult and the work's hard, like the labor population that had expertise in that area was probably pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it was much more of a physical workforce then, and there's an understanding that a lot of the initial workers were returning veterans from the northern states of the Civil War. So they were coming back from the war. If they weren't wounded or compromised in any way, some of them did be looking for work, and this would be something to get them, sort of guaranteed work that had a clear goal and a clear vision in mind that someone could sign up for. But there are figures suggesting that there were up to 300 laborers engaged at a time. I think that might be a bit inflated, but there was certainly between clearing the way and actually building our track is entirely trestle based. So it's basically like one big bridge ascending the mountain, and the height off the ground varies depending on the terrain. So different than a traditional railway that would be set right on the ground. So these guys are not only building a railway, but they're building basically a big trestle all the way up the mountain.
Yeah, and I think the weather conditions and things like that, from a preventative maintenance perspective, like early on, the concerns around like oil freezing and fuel and things like that, I would imagine they could only run it, like you said, it's seasonal. So I would imagine by like the fall, they would have to just shut it down completely, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much a June to September operation in those days. And that actually persisted for quite a while. Our operating season was pretty much May to October or November until just a few years ago when we started exploring partial winter operations. But yeah, in those early days, it was strictly a summer operation for sure.
Yeah, and we'll talk about all the activities and stuff, because there's a lot that goes on, especially in the winter. Like I've been at the Cog a bunch of times. Almost every winter, I do at least one trip down the Cog from a hiking perspective. But just going back to the technology to start with, so you, for most of the life of the railway, you utilized non-diesel trains, but you have cut over in the last, the last 10 years or so, you've transitioned to diesel trains mostly?
Yeah, the first viable diesel was built in 2008, and we now have a fleet of 7 of those. We do maintain a couple of steam engines to kind of keep that heritage alive, but 90% of the trips, or if not more, that are going up the mountain are diesel powered now with that larger diesel fleet.
Yeah, and I do like I'll hike in the morning a lot in the area, and you do see usually the first train in the morning, the steam trains that come up, like it's just sort of like, okay, the Mount Washington Valley is like waking up. It's pretty good. But do you just run that train like one time and then the rest of it's diesel, or does that train go up and down all day like the other ones?
No, it's more of a finite schedule, so it'll go twice a day, usually the very first and the very last hours of the operation, and during a shorter season as well. So it doesn't get rolled out until the Memorial Day weekend, and then it gets put away Columbus Day weekend. So it's running a more condensed portion of the season, and that helps us out with freezing temperatures and considerations for the water and so forth that it has to take on. And just the twice a day, whereas the diesels are going every hour on the hour.
And the correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to remember, like you push the passenger cars up. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's another way that would pretty different from a traditional railway. So the engine is behind the coach, and the coach is being, in the railway industry, it's called being shoved ahead. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, if you had the engine pulling that coach car, you'd have tremendous stress on the coupling system on that grade. And also for safety, with that in mind, if you have the heavier engine behind the lighter coach, you have more safety fail-safes, essentially. So the coaches all have their own brakes, and by not being connected together, because while they're touching, they're not hitched together in any way. The engine, because the whole track is on a grade, the engine just sits behind that coach and pushes it up the whole time. And then when they come down, the coach rests on the engine with the diesels, and it does the braking through the hydraulic system, or in the case of the steam, you're actually adding brake in the coach. There's a crew member on board. The brakeman actually manually brakes that coach all the way down the mountain. If you weren't doing anything in that coach, the overspeed would get to be really intolerable. So the engine only has a certain amount of holdback power with our heavier coaches that we run today.
And are the brakes like we would think of as traditional, like brake pads, or is it all based on the cog technology?
It's a hybrid, so it is brake pads on a drum for these manual brake coaches, the ones that would be on the steam trips. And the axle that's mounted on is adjacent to the gear. So essentially you're braking on that same axle where the gear is mounted, so there wouldn't be any friction braking force going on the wheel per se, just like the wheel's not driving. So you're braking just adjacent to that drive gear and stopping that whole shaft from turning, or slowing the turning of that shaft. And then all of the diesels and our newer coaches do have an air brake setup that can pretty much lock and hold very quickly anywhere on the mountain. And those are quite similar to what you would see on a mainline train, or even on like a tractor trailer with the air cans.
Awesome. And the for people that want to purchase tickets, so essentially you can buy tickets to go up to Mount Washington. You can do winter up to do you go to the summit in winter, or you go just to Jacob's Ladder, right?
We go just a little below Jacobs. We have an area called Wambeck Station.
Wambeck,
which is about 4,000 feet roughly on the side of the mountain. We've kind of built a nice destination there where there are level platforms that you can enjoy the views from. There's warming huts, a little fire pit.
Yeah, there's a fire pit. It's a cool, and then you can also it's very entertaining because you can see all the hikers like doing the sort of the death march at the finish of their hike, and then you can see all the skiers, going up and going down, and there's a lot going on in that area. But if you're interested in the COG, essentially, you can buy tickets online, or you can you can drive right up, go to Marshfield Base Station. It's not always guaranteed that you're going to have available tickets. You sell out, I'm assuming, in certain days, but you can go there. Sure. And then when you do take the COG, there's a in the coach, there's somebody that will give you sort of like a informational tour and do a little bit of entertainment when you're riding up.
Yes, we like to have that as one of the driving aspects of the experience. And there's a crew member that will give a narration that's a little different every time. Each crew member has their own approach. So if you do visit more than once, it won't necessarily be the same spiel. It's certainly not a script. Everyone comes up with their own approach based on a loose outline. Mm-hmm. And they'll do everything from a little bit of history to a little bit of the mechanical, and then a little bit of the natural elements that are going on and what you can see in flora. And it's basically an individualized approach that can change based on the weather and what experience is going on that day.
Yeah, and you get a huge mix of people. I'm assuming you'll get locals that want to go up there, and then you get a lot of tourists. But it really is great. It's sort of like the same thing as the auto road, is it gives people, and I know we're hikers and we're like, we're purists and we want people to like, we don't want anything on our mountains, but like, there's a lot going on in Mount Washington. We can give access to like other people on Mount Washington, but it's great that you can get people up there. And I think in the early days, right as it was opening too, it was like it gave people more access. And I do think people need to think from the perspective of there was a population of activists in the late 1800s, early 1900s that were responsible for protecting these mountains that we love. And I think I would guarantee you that a lot of the people that were involved in protecting these mountains, it wasn't all just hikers and outdoors people. It was people that had gone up on the Cog or the auto road and realized like just how majestic this is. So I do think that, there's a lot of purist hikers, but I do think that there's a lot of benefit for giving people access that wouldn't otherwise be able to hike up.
Correct. Yeah, the accessibility is a big thing because not everyone is necessarily able to hike, like you said, and it'll give people an exposure to an alpine zone that they couldn't normally experience firsthand. And as long as they respectfully conduct themselves while they're there and learn about it, it's a great window that can be open to folks that wouldn't have that access. And, I agree. I don't want to see unchecked development in the mountains. Mount Washington has this history associated with it. And if, there's one peak that is sort of ultra developed in a sense that Mount Washington is, with a road and a large summit building and a railway, and it's there, and the other peaks are kept wild, then that's something that I think is acceptable, as long as you're not spreading this unchecked development across the entire national forest, which, you couldn't build this railway today if it was an operation that was just being conceived of now. And that's a good thing. It gives that chance to experience it to those that wouldn't have it. But, you don't want this everywhere. You don't want this on every single peak in the White Mountains for sure. Yeah.
And I would say as a hiker, so if the hikers that are listening to this, I think definitely I would recommend if you want to climb Mount Washington, especially if you want to do it in a way that's, it's never going to be safe, but I think one of the safer routes, in my opinion, and one of the best ways to do it in winter is to actually, and you can park at the Amanuensis lot. It'll add, I think, an extra like quarter of a mile, a half mile, but I prefer actually to go to the Cog Railway lot and start my day there because it is there's no, you don't have to worry about break-ins. There's going to be people around, so it's pretty safe. It is a fee. I think it's like $10 or something. It's pretty easy to just pay it. Yeah. And then the nice thing about it is that you get access to the Marshfield base station, so you can use the bathroom, you can change, get ready in there. You can get a nice hot chocolate, you can get a hot dog, whatever you want is available. And then people don't understand this. They always ask this question, but there's a trail system from the Cog that connects. It's called the Amanuensis Connector Trail or something like that. So essentially, like, you can park at the Cog Railway. The hiker parking is in the lower lot. You just go up. You can stop at the base station, use the bathroom, and then from there you can go up Amanuensis and then summit, Monroe, Washington, and then you can hike back down the Cog Railway. Typically, you'll sort of stay to the right-hand side, and then you do have to cross over when you get to Jacob's Ladder. But it's an enjoyable hike. It's it's steeper than you're used to, but it's a great way to experience Mount Washington in the winter. And I've done it. I think I've done it for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's a great area. So I think hikers have benefited quite a bit. And the lot's always going to be plowed too. That's the nice thing too.
Yeah, I'll bring up my guests on snowmobiles too. They love it. Just for a nice respite from the cold and hit the food and the gift shop. And everybody loves it in the New Hampshire gift shop, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
And I'll be honest, we had a little pushback when we started charging again for, so hiker parking historically was charged at the Cog going back for a while, and then it was abolished for a period. And then when it was brought back more recently-ish, there was some pushback from folks, oh, why are you guys charging? What is this? But in turn, we actually plowed that entire 6-mile base road.
Yes.
So we took that over. We are basically subcontracted by the state to keep that clear so that we can pay more deliberate attention to it. Because of the microclimate there, it gets pounded with snow when other areas aren't necessarily seeing anything. So we can kind of stay on top of it better. And then, of course, we'll keep that lot plot out. And like you said, access to the building. So yes, we're charging that $10, but we're also providing these services. And if folks don't want to take advantage of that, they, like you said, they can certainly park at the ammo lot for the $5, or I think it's, USFS $5 fee instead.
Yeah.
But we feel like we do offer some things that, you get your money's worth for that $10 with the nice warm heated building and the bathrooms, the gift shop, the security of it. We do patrol that area. So like you said, that you don't have to worry about someone breaking into a car there, certainly.
Yeah, and most importantly, as a hiker, like you save about a quarter of a half mile of extra hiking, which is critical to me because even though I'm a hiker, I'm still lazy.
We find that a lot. Even folks, they don't want to park in the hiker lot. They want to come up, and I understand. They want to park right next to the building,
yes,
and then jump on that ammo connector or jump on the jewel connector there. And you tell them, no, I'm sorry, you're going to move your car down to the hiker lot so that we can keep this for the train passengers and make sure all the hikers are there and keep it separate. And most of the people, 9 times out of 10, they'll gladly go down there to the hiker lot and understand. But you always get someone that extra 1,000, 1,500 feet, whatever it is, that's just a deal breaker for them. And they'll get really agitated about it.
Yeah, I know it is a low. I will say I do think like the first time I did it, I could park in the upper lot, and then they did switch it to the lower lot. But it's a little bit of a walk. It's like 2 minutes. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, but it's great, and then you can get hot chocolate. You can one time we did hang out at the base station afterwards because we were ahead of some other hikers, so we waited there, and it was kind of fun to watch everything. There's a lot going on. So in the wintertime, you've got like the skiers that are teeing up. You got a lot of people that are skinning up. I think you can actually take the railway up if you're a skier, and then get off and ski. Right?
That's right. We've tried to keep this under wraps for a while because we weren't sure how to manage it, but now we want the word to get out that we do offer rides up for skiers. A lot of people want to get themselves up there. They want to skin up. But for those that want to use the train like a ski lift, you can buy a ticket to our Wambeck station, and you get 2 runs for the price of that 1 round trip ticket because you're not coming down. So we'll give you 2 rides up, essentially 2 lifts up to that point. And some folks will use that as a jumping off point. They'll ride up to Wambeck, and then they'll continue skinning from there higher. And some will just take that rip down from Wambeck Station down what we call Cold Spring Hill, that real first sharp ascent there right back to the base station, and then hit it again. So, you can basically use the train as an antique ski lift and get a nice warm heated train ride up to there to jump off your skiing adventure.
Yeah. And the other thing that's great about in the winter, actually all seasons, is you're guaranteed to see a moose every time that you ride the Cog Railway.
That's right. I won't give maybe too much away, but it is guaranteed. If you're looking out the first few minutes of the ride, a moose will be there.
Yes. Yeah. Guaranteed. Some other events that you have. So you actually started partnering with our friend Christina. So there's a Race the Cog event. So can you talk a little bit about your memory or recollection from concept to the first time you've done it? Now I think it's the second year that we've had it running up there.
Yeah, we're going into the 3rd one this coming June. So if you're into the ultra running events and the crazy, trail running stuff, this is a unique one. For those that don't know about it, it's called Race the Cog. Cool. It's June 23rd. That's Sunday, June 23rd. And essentially what it is you're running alongside our right of way. So right next to the tracks is a crewed, and I'll use this term loosely, trail. I believe it shows up on all trails and things like that, which is sort of funny, but it's not a maintained trail, and it's more for our access to work on the tracks. We certainly invite people to use it and use that as a means of access both in the winter and the summer. And this race will run right up. It's about 2.75 miles to reach the summit from the base on this route. And you're talking about a 3,500 foot elevation gain. And the terrain's pretty rough. It's a mixture of dirt, sort of loose talus-y stuff at one point. When you get next to Burt's Ravine, it is pretty loose through there above Jacob's Ladder.
Yep.
And then it does finally get a little more relenting when you pitch over what we call Skyline, and there's that last just under a mile push to the summit from there when you start getting parallel with Gulfside and whatnot. And it's a crazy run. Our train goes up in about 40 to 45 minutes, the diesel locomotive. So you're essentially racing against that train to try to beat that train to the summit. So you're talking that kind of gain, that kind of distance in 40 to 45 minutes. And
crazy.
It's pretty demanding. And if you're into that elite category where you can really run at that level, then you're racing the train. But folks, there's also what they call the chill wave. You can come out just for the experience. You maybe know you're not going to beat the train, but you want to run that route. You want to have that experience. And there's plenty of folks in that group as well. And it's a great event. We do it the whole morning, and folks come together. And Christina's great, White Mountain Endurance, and you can sign up and be a part of it.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to DJ that last one this year, and that was great. So I just want to clarify things here. So we had Joe Gray take the lead for the men, and then Amber Ferreira took it this past year. Did they physically beat the train, or did the train come in first? So what happened?
The first year, Joe beat the train by almost a minute. Pretty soundly beat the train. And then,
so you guys got a chip on your shoulder.
I did. And long story short, all of the diesels are pretty much the same. We actually build them ourselves, really. So they're all pretty much the same, but there is one that is inherently faster than the rest. And we're talking by 4.76 miles an hour to maybe 4.9 miles an hour, something.
Holy moly! Yeah.
So I wanted that locomotive in the mix for this past year's event, and it wasn't possible to have maintenance things that were going on. So I will, it's unofficial, but I may have
that's so funny.
The engine we used that day behave like the one I wanted to be in there in terms of adjusting its maximum speed.
I didn't,
this is a riot. He's messing with the governor.
But I might have put it on a performance enhancer for that trip, that one trip right there.
Oh my God, that's so funny. You guys are great. I'm telling you, that is so much fun to hear the whistle blow to start the race, and then everybody's like, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that energy.
Like nothing. Oh yeah, there's no energy. I mean, Mount Washington Road Race is one thing, but there's nothing like man versus machine, like the Terminator. It was so cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
I had a chat with the engineer. His name was Mike, that was running the trip that day, this past year. And I said, Mike, we got beat last year. I don't want to get beat this year. So when you get across that switch, we do have a switch coming out of the base, and there's the protocol where you have to go a switch speed that is approximately 1.5 miles an hour. And that is to ensure that the train behaves properly in the part of the track that is intended to move. So I said to him, when you come out and you clear that switch, normally we have a ramped acceleration where we gradually get up to speed, up the bridge, and then across. I told him to kind of be a little more liberal with the throttle there and take right off. And so you can see I took a video of it because it's exciting when that race starts, and you see the queue of runners all ready to go. You see the train, traversing the switch. And then as soon as he clears it, he laces on the horn and just accelerates. I mean, we're talking 5 miles an hour. That's all they do. From 1.5 to 5 quickly. It's kind of exciting.
I have another idea, and Mike, you might like this with your new video game thing. But you guys could do the old Donkey Kong and start like dropping barrels and like oil and stuff like that. Slow the runners down. What do you think? Yeah. No?
Yeah, we get some banana peels, chuck them out.
The runners are like, I didn't sign up for this. But actually, that is a good question, Andy. Is how do you guys handle like the load balancing? Because I do feel like there's a lot of lollygaggers up in the like summit that may not. Do you get to the point where like you've got too many people up in the summit that aren't taking? You go with a half full train, and then at the end of the day, all of a sudden you find like, oh no, I got to push 2 more trains up. Or are you pretty good about telling people like, you got to get on the train, or we're holding a train until it's full?
So we actually sell the round trip as a 3-hour experience. So just like you have a departure that leaves the base at a given time, that's then paired with your time coming off the summit.
Okay.
So that tries to cut into people staying too long up there, because then that makes it impossible for us to plan how many folks are going to, on a good day, they could be up there all day, and then we have to fetch them with a train or, multiple trains potentially late in the day. We get folks that will sort of ignore that rule, and then they're put on standby. So the method of discouragement, I guess, is if you miss your train off the summit, and that one that leaves an hour after your arrival, essentially, you're then boarded on subsequent trains as availability allows. So obviously all the ticketed passengers will be allowed on first, and then if there's room, you'll be put on standby, and then you're put in. Your party might get split up. You certainly won't have the same seat that you had on the way up. But we do get folks that'll miss trains. We do one-ways as well, so that's another. If we have extra room on the way down, we sell a one-way ticket, and hikers will utilize that.
Okay.
So we just try to make sure that we interface with the hikers, and a lot of folks sadly don't understand. You ask them what trail they hiked up, and they look at you like, what are you talking about? Or they can't remember what it's called, or they try to give them clues. Okay, what was at the base when you started? Was there a train or not? Do you remember anything about Pinkham Notch or Joe Dodge? Do you remember anything about Ammonoosuc? And then some of them will get it, and some of them really have no idea, because if we take this one way on the train and they go down with us and they hiked up, through Tuckerman's,
you're 20 miles away.
Then you're way, exactly. And they don't, especially if they're not from around you, they don't understand that. And then they're kind of left in the.
Yeah, they're going to blame you, like, you made me come down here.
Right.
So
we try to ask them, okay, how did you hike up? Or what trail were you on? And if we can get them to answer that, then we know we can guide them, and then we could send them down on the road shuttle if they came up on that side. But if they came up on the west side, we'll gladly take them down. But sadly, we get a lot of folks, they have no map, they have no knowledge of what trail they hiked up, and you ask them, and they think there's only one way to get up, and they were on it, and they're woefully unaware of what's going on.
Yeah, it's crazy. You must have like so many stories like that. Do you find like a lot of the workers that you work with are you a lot of you guys hikers?
No, I would say it's not the minority, but for real serious hikers, it's probably myself and just a couple others. Some of the seasonal folks are pretty avid hikers. Of the year-round folks, there's probably less. We have a guy, Ray, who has worked here for quite a while, and he is active on the steam train, and he runs the Wambeck station a couple days a week in the winter and maintains the fire pit up there. Mm-hmm. And he's a big hiker. He likes to get out. He likes to get out there on bushwhacks and stuff, and we chat a lot about various adventures. But I would say there aren't a lot of us that are super into it, but there's enough of us that we shoot stuff around and share stories and ideas for what to do next.
Yeah, and I know there was a few years back, like so before we talk about the ownership, so the ownership has passed around a little bit, but like the ownership's been pretty stable for 40 years or so. So Wayne Presby, the Presby family has owned the Cog Railway, and local family, I think they own various businesses, but they took over ownership in a partnership in like 1983, but he's owned it sort of outright for the last 10 years or so, I think, right?
Yeah, 2017, he bought out the Bedores that were the other major controlling interest. Okay. And then more recently, there's been some small stakeholders that he's tried to consolidate the ownership from in more recent times. But essentially, the Presby family, in all true purposes, is the sole owner at this point, with some real minority interest, I think, still might be kicking around there.
Got it. And then he's been the driving force around like the building out like a lot of offerings that are available in winter now. So I think people think like, it's not just seasonal now. There's a lot going on in the winter that people can check out between, the skiing, snowboarding, snowshoeing, hiker parking, and then the Wambeck Station trips. And the Wambeck Station is at 4,000 feet, so you can catch an undercast. You can see all kinds of amazing views. I mean, you're really up there. But he's also explored the idea of like trying to set up some overnight options. And I think that originally there was some talk about a structure, but then that was changed to potentially just having more like, I think, overnight friendly train cars. I don't know where things are from that perspective, but I think one of the things I want to call out is, hikers were pushing back on some of these ideas.
Sure.
But one of the things that I always talk about I talk about this with the AMC, I talk about this with the Auto Road, I talk about this with the COG, is that you guys will step in and help with hiker rescues. And I think at least every year we've had a story where somebody gets in trouble on Mount Washington, and you guys will step in. So I guess two questions for you is, one is, are there still plans to do overnight stays somehow? And then two, can you talk about sort of your engagement with doing different rescues and working with Fish and Game?
Sure. Right now, the sort of discussion about an overnight arrangement is in a holding phase. So we don't really have the infrastructure in place at our base to construct what we would need to construct to make that a reality right now. So there are a lot of things we would need to do that are on our short-term plans at the base in order to realize that as a goal that would work towards. The initial plan that was heavily maligned and pushed back on was a physical structure, like you mentioned, at skyline, so roughly 5,000 feet on the west side, and it would have a degree of visibility from various places. And it was understandable why there was pushback to that proposal. That's long since been struck from our goals and intentions completely. And the iteration that sort of survives today, but is in an indefinite hold, would be sleeping cars at what we would call the Lizzie's area. So the Lizzie Bourne Memorial Marker there, that's trackside, just down mountain of that would be a siding or a couple of sidings with sleeper cars that could accommodate overnight guests that would not be physically built on the mountain, but would actually be rail cars that would be movable. So that sort of sits.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, it's fantastic. It's a great solution.
It pulls. The goal of it would be to pull some of the overcrowding off the summit as well. The summit is such a highly visited area between us and the road and hikers in the summer that if there was another spot just below the summit where folks could sort of congregate and there could be a siding there for our trains, we could alleviate some of the pressure from that. But like I said, it's something that's in an indefinite hold right now, just because there's a lot of things we have to consider with making that a reality, and also a lot of infrastructure and planning that goes into building those sleeper cars if we're going to go and embrace that plan.
Got it. Yeah. And then obviously, like, you guys are available for search and rescue and helping out. So that's sort of like, I know that there was, a lot of feedback from the hiking community around like the plans that we talked about. And my pushback has always been like, look, keep in mind that when people get in trouble, like these organizations are stepping up for sure. And I think you guys have at least like 2 or 3 a year actually that I can think of that you're helping out with. So can you talk a little bit about how that happens? Like what the engagement is like with Fish and Game and what you have to do when the calls come in?
Sure. So our general manager, who I work closely with, Ryan Presby, he has a law enforcement background.
Yeah.
So he has all of the contact info and the inroads into Fish and Game. And if a rescue comes up where we could facilitate assistance with, so if it's something on more the west side or the approach would make sense with us, he'll get a call from either Mark Ober or someone that will sort of orchestrate this and express what they need, and we'll say if we can provide it or not. And we always are willing to help. So if they say they want our help, we'll jump in and do what needs to be done. So it starts with that phone call to our GM, and then he'll then orchestrate a train crew to go up. Sometimes it's himself and another crew member, Josh, who lives very close. And I've been on 1 or 2, and it's just having the staff available that's willing. And we do have a number of folks that are super willing to jump into this stuff. So we'll get the train together. Sometimes Fish and Game will meet us at the base and they'll ride up. Sometimes they're just requesting a way to bring an injured hiker down without having to hike them down. So sometimes they're already on scene somewhere and they might get them to the track and whatever's feasible. And then we'll get them on the train and transport them down. And there have been a number of notable ones that we've assisted in. And you're right, it is a few every year. Sometimes it's just as simple as a twisted knee. Sometimes fishing game's not even involved. We'll get flagged down by someone on Gulf side or west side, and they'll come over and we can get them up on the train, bring them back to base. But often we're working close with Fish and Game to coordinate an approach, and we've expressed to them, please use us. If you've got a rescue attempt that using us as your approach makes more sense than going up the road and is quicker than going up the road, by all means, get in touch with us, and we're ready and willing to assist to make sure that we can provide every resource we can to make a rescue more feasible or to make it more smooth to get somebody out.
Wow. And do you, the few times that you've been on, is your adrenaline pumping? Are you like, oh man, this is crazy? Yeah, no,
I get excited. I just very recently got my wilderness first aid and, re-up my CPR. So the rescue world is something that appeals to me. I would love to be on search and rescue, but I don't have a lot of time to actualize that.
Yeah.
So helping in this arena is a great way for me to help, because it's interlaced with my work, where I often am, especially in the busy season where it's a lot of long days. But, no matter how long the day is, the core group of us will jump right in, whatever's needed, and help facilitate something on the side of the mountain to really offer what we can to help.
Yeah. There's a fair amount of rescues that go on the Jewel Trail and Gulf Side and the West Side. So there's a lot of activity. Matter of fact, I don't know if you listened to way back in the early days of the show, I talked about I stumbled on a couple of now friends of mine who had found an old backpack that was like a mile up the Jewel Trail that was involved in a rescue of a guy that had been hiking with his sons. They got separated in the parking lot. He went back up and almost died, but he did survive. But we found his backpack that had been abandoned, that he had lost. So there's a lot that goes on up there.
Oh, yeah. And we want to see us as something that's woven into the hiking community, where we'll work with hikers. We're there as a resource. Don't count on us being a one-way opportunity, because if we can't reach the summit for weather reasons, we just won't be there. So yeah. I always say, don't plan your trip. Don't plan, okay, I'm going to hike up and take the cog down. Use it as a not a last resort, but an option. I wouldn't say base your hike around that, just because there are things that can change. Yeah. But we want to work with both hikers and with search and rescue to kind of not create, we don't want this divisive, hikers versus the cog. There's the whole moon the cog thing that's been tradition for a long time, and sort of a contentious relationship between the hiking community and the cog. We want to really knock a lot of that down and provide access points for hikers and kind of bridge everything together and smooth it over and have a better relationship with the hiking community moving forward.
Yeah. And like I said, you guys are stepping up, helping with search and rescues. There's the offerings that you have for hikers for convenience, especially the parking area there. And then, hiking down the cog is like an experience. Like I tell people, like you need to do that at least once in your life, because it's such an amazing view, and it's a unique view. And the one thing I love about hiking down the cog, especially when you get a good view, is like you can look at Marshfield Station and just it looks like so far away when you start, and then you start getting closer and closer. But it's such a unique experience to have something that you can sort of baseline against, to say like, all right, that's my destination. Usually you're doing that when you're going uphill, but not a lot of times you get that opportunity when you're going downhill. So yeah, it's just unique. Question about the decision making for like bad weather and things like that. So how do you guys manage? I'm assuming you're looking at the weather all the time, but like, what is the tolerance for saying like, okay, we can no longer go up on the trains because the wind is too far or too fast, or the weather's too bad?
Sure. We work really close with the Mount Washington Observatory. I have their forecast is on frequent refresh on my phone, on my computer, wherever I'm at. And I'll call them at times to get more detailed information about conditions that are occurring up there, and sometimes ground conditions, and kind of build a lot of that into a decision-making process when the weather does turn foul. The biggest thing that will stop the train is wind. So we'll run into a multitude of, snow, ice, and conditions like that, and it doesn't really affect the operation because of the gear drive. It's not like you're going to lose traction or anything like that, or slip. because of the penetration into the rack. So the issues we're concerned about have to do with wind primarily and the wind load on the train, but more particularly the experience of the guests stepping off the train at the summit and being hit with that wind up there. Yeah. While the train can withstand winds up to and just over 100 miles an hour, your average person doesn't want to be smacked in the face with that, and as soon as they're stepping out of the rail car at the top. So we do have a cutoff where if we have sustained winds in excess of 74 miles an hour with that sort of category 1 hurricane threshold, that's when we'll pull stuff back and the train will operate, but it will operate to what we have that skyline point, which is just above tree line, around 5,000 feet, a little above tree line, but it's at a point on the coal between Washington and Clay where it's sheltered enough that you're not going to get bombarded with wind the same way you would further up and towards the summit. So it's kind of what we have, a safe zone there where we can still give you a journey pretty high up and still get that alpine zone without getting into the worst of the exposure there. And then the price gets adjusted downward a little bit if that has to happen.
All right. What's the even on a, not necessarily just on a bad day, but on any day when you've got the passengers that are clearly not hikers, like what is their reaction when they get to that like little section of Gulf Side where they start seeing like the hikers up next to the train? Are they all like, what are those people are crazy, or do they have a common reaction?
Yeah, no, that is a very common reaction they have is, look at the crazy people, or, what are those crazy people doing? I mean, if it's a bluebird day, there's not a lot of reaction to it. But, it's those days where it's pea soup visibility and someone, crosses under West Side or comes across Trinity Heights and they pop out of the fog, and then the train ridership go, whoa, where do they come from? What are they doing up here? People hike up here in this, and it may not even be that disagreeable. It might just be a low vis day with calmish wind and temperatures agreeable. But yeah, most of our ridership is not doesn't have an overlap with a hiking community, so they see folks that are hiking Mount Washington as extremists and real well-versed alpinists that are part of a unique elite, which is certainly not the case, but that's how they see it from their perspective.
Don't tell them. Don't give it away. I get that since I'll be up there eating my hot dog in cloudy weather or something, and someone will be like, "You walk up here?" I'll be like, "Yeah."
They're amazed. Yeah.
They get very interested. So, wow, that's interesting. So, for listeners, I think if you've got somebody in your family that doesn't like it, they're not into hiking, but you want to give them a taste of what we experience. Like, I think the Cog is a great way to do that. Like, I'm planning on taking my dad up the next time he comes up for sure, because he's always talking about how he's like wants to see these mountains, and he's been up on the auto road a couple of times, but I haven't taken him up on the Cog. So it's a great way to get like older family members or younger family members or people that just aren't into hiking. Maybe you can get them to into the hiking bug if you can take them up on the Cog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and if you want a free ride, join Search and Rescue.
Right.
So,
we need the help.
Yeah. And then, so you guys are pretty focused on safety, and you have to get in a lot of detail on this, but I do, we did at one point cover there's been a couple of incidents over the years, long time ago. We're talking like, years and years ago, but you put in a lot of sort of safety protocols, and I'm assuming like there's a lot of different, you're the guy that's in charge of like testing all the safety equipment and all that. So, talk a little bit about sort of safety from your perspective.
Sure. I mean, there's that adage that safety is number one, and that's sort of cliched, but it really is. Everything starts from that. The crew's first responsibility is safety of themselves, the guest, and the equipment, and then second to that is the guest experience, but nothing will ever compromise the safety aspect and the vigilance that's required to operate a train on the side of a mountain. So we do have various protocols that have to be adhered to in order to ensure that safety remains a constant. And that includes stopping at all the switches, the parts of the track that are designed to move. So you're coming to a positive stop and confirming everything's aligned before proceeding. There are safety features of both the coaches and the engines that are tested before each trip, and inspections that are done both at the base and the summit before the next leg of the journey begins, and walk-arounds by the crew, just check everything over. and the diesels are all computerized. So the system that the engineers have essentially in their face will give them real-time thresholds for temperatures, pressures, and so forth that they can then monitor for the whole trip. So vigilance is key. You know, this isn't a subway that has signals and signal control and things like that. You know, you really have to be engaged with the operation, but you know, we have a good crew that looks out for safety as number one and make sure that they're adhering to protocols that are set forth to make sure that each trip, while it might be different in the experience side, is sort of cookie cutter the same in terms of the protocol side of things.
Yeah, you must have some amazing mechanics too, right?
Oh yeah, the crew here, I mean, the COG has a long-standing tradition of doing things in-house. We're really self-sufficient and independent in that regard. We have our own shop facility that, talk about the Presby family innovation. Just a couple of years ago, this massive facility went up at the base where we can really, with some state-of-the-art tools, work on our fleet in a much more agreeable environment. Our old shop is a very historic building. It's been there since the 1800s, and it's a great place to visit to get a look at what happened. But we were working in it up until just a few years ago. So this new facility and our mechanics that work out of it, I mean, they're a great core group of guys, and everything from guys that work on the diesel engines to machinists, carpenters, you name it. We try to keep it in-house. We outsource pretty much as little as we can, or little as we need to. But we're doing a lot of our own fabricating right under one roof down there.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of, like, in the at the base station, there's a lot of displays around the history of the railway, and it sounds like you can look at the original train, and then you can get into that older building that you just talked about.
That one isn't quite where we're trying to work on a system where we can formalize the shop tour experience, but okay. Right now, not something that we're inviting most of the general public to partake in terms of a shop tour. But the museum that's in the Marshfield building does give a great timeline going back to the inception, and you can see how the railway has sort of evolved along the way. There's a lot of interactive displays and videos that run on a loop in there. And of course, the Pepper Sass locomotive, the original engine, is on display at the base right trackside where folks board, so they can see that awkward engine that got it all started. So even folks that don't ride, they come up and they walk through the museum and they can get a whole experience at the base, even without taking a train ride necessarily. Yeah, no, I love going in there before hikes and just checking everything out and getting something to eat, and then even better, Stomp, using the bathroom before the hike. It's much better than the Amanuensis parking lot privy. Oh, yeah.
Mike's priorities.
Right, yeah. Exactly. After that long drive up, I'm like, bathroom immediately.
I like a good pre-hike bathroom, but when I'm out there, I'm a big poop in the woods guy, so I do like it.
Okay.
Pretty much every hike.
You should meet Dave Shits in the Woods.
Every hike, really?
I really should, yeah. Because every hike, I like to take a nice number 2 out there pretty much every time I get out.
Yeah. Well, I end up doing that occasionally too, but like every time I do it, I like, no matter how far off the trail I go, somebody comes walking along and I get all nervous. So, but we have to send you a link to the crap strap then. You'll have to see this product that you can use. So
I've heard of that.
Yes. Yes, the crap strap. So so just be careful if you're walking around Burt Ravine. Andy's been there. So
I tried not to go above tree line. There might have been times where it was an emergency, but
yeah, exactly.
Try not to do that.
Yeah. All right, so this is great. So we'll put all the links to the activities and ticket sales and all that stuff on the Mount Washington Cog Railway. Hikers, like I said, accessibility, helping out with search and rescue. Stop mooning the train. We're not doing that anymore. These are our friends, so be nice.
Right.
And, definitely check it out. And like I said, rite of passage hike for me, absolutely in the winter, parking at the Cog, going up the ammo, and then coming down the Cog Railway. Don't fall into Burt Ravine. You got to be careful there. Stomp. You got to bring your crampons for that section, but otherwise it's pretty safe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Anything else we missed, Andy?
No, I think that pretty much covers everything. We invite folks to check us out. If if anyone wants the website, it is thecog, THECOG.com, and that'll have our schedule, ticket information. We have information for hikers up there. I mean, you can just go there to buy tickets, but if you poke around on the site, there's actually a lot of information there. So yeah, thecog.com.
Yeah, and that Wambach Station section there is actually perfect. Like a lot of times in the winter, it's too much. It's like it's crazy up there in the summit. Like it's been a good week, but a lot of times like it's not t-shirt weather like it's been. So it's nice to just go to that Wambach. You got the fire pit there, and you're good to go. It's enough in the winter.
Yeah, it's a great ambiance there, and you can get that mountain experience without going up into the alpine zone where it's crazy. Yeah. We'd love to run to the summit all year, but it's just not something that the mountain would agree with a lot of times. Yeah. I think a lot of the hikers too in the winter, like it is nice to you don't have to wait in line for the pictures and all that stuff. So I think it's a good balance for sure. Mm-hmm. So, Stomp, any questions for Andy before we move on to? We'll just do a quick hiker communication segment, and then we'll wrap up.
No, I think we're good. Come over and say hi if I'm fortunate enough to be invited back for the DJing for that Race the Cog.
I was going to say, are you going to DJ again?
I hope so. We'll see. Yeah. That was such a great time. I actually have a funny story. Mr. Presby Sr. came over towards the end of the event, and he said, he goes, "Hey, thanks for playing that Morgan Wallen song." I'll never forget that. I'm like, all right, I know what to play next year. That was a good memory. But thank you for joining us, and this has been great. I'm sure the listeners will love it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on it. I really enjoyed it, and I love the podcast, and my girlfriend Cameron got me into you guys, and
cool.
It's great. Yeah, you guys have an awesome show.
Yeah, we never imagined that we'd actually get some like serious people on this dumb podcast, but it's worked out.
No kidding.
Yeah, not too bad.
No kidding.
Slasher's hiking topic of the week.
So let me ask you this. So moving into our next segment, we're going to talk about sort of hiker communication. When you go out, it sounds like you do a lot of solo stuff. Do you have like an inReach or anything, or you just rely on your cell phone?
I don't have. So actually, my girlfriend and I just got an inReach, so it's new to us, and I haven't used it on a hike yet. And I used to be, I don't know why I was, but I used to be really stubborn against modern technology on a hike. Like my phone is a tool, but it's one that I don't want to rely on or really use that much other than take pictures if the battery's fine. Like I'll scout stuff using like Gaia or All Trails, but I don't like to actually, I think one hike did I actually do a navigate feature and like track my time and stuff on the phone. Like I try to keep that stuff to a minimum when I'm out there. But yeah, we just got one. So we're going to start going with that and just as an extra like form of safety out there.
Yeah. Well, Stomp put together a list here of just some pre-hike ideas and then some on-hike stuff. So, Stomp, I don't know, you want to go through the list here?
Yeah, sure. It's always good to refresh on these ideas. So, pre-hike, if you are going out on a hike, here are a few tips. Definitely you want to leave plans with your friends and family. Let them know where you're going, what you're hiking, what your anticipated start times are going to be, your anticipated end times, what gear you're taking. The gear thing is interesting. Let people know what you have, what color your clothing will be. If you have a water bottle that may look a particular way, you never know if you may become a subject of a search. Those details can be really helpful. Leave behind your bailout routes, a plan B, and also the car make and model. Okay, simple stuff. And don't let ego talk you out of telling people your plans. It's one of those things like, I can't wait to share this on Facebook after I complete this, but nobody's going to know this one until after the fact. That's not a smart move. You definitely want to let people know ahead of time. Estimated times for specific locations can be handy. If you think you're going to be at Lincoln Lafayette by 11 o'clock, great. Just document them, write them down. End time we mentioned. The time for those aware of your plans to press the red button. This is always a little bit contentious and can cause problems, but if you think you have a time where your loved ones, friends and family should call 911 or call the authorities, try to write that down. I know that can be a little bit controversial, but it may be a life-saving maneuver. I've been in this situation myself, and it's not comfortable, but
yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah.
I probably need to reset with Mrs. Mike on this one because I've never really talked about that. I just kind of assume like, okay, I'm going to be in the car by 4, I'll be home by 7, and I usually just assume I'm going to check in with her, so I should just remind her like, hey, if you haven't heard from me by like 5:30 or so, like, start checking around. But I do always leave a note, and I tell her who I'm hiking with and how they can get in touch with those people if they need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any comments on that, Andy?
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of occasions where my girlfriend was hiking solo and, of course, don't have contact. And it got to be a point at which I started to wonder about time. I wasn't worried at all. She's more than capable, but I start to wonder, like, okay, haven't heard.
Yeah.
So, there's one occasion where I went up the trail to meet her. And then there was an occasion I drove into Zealand down and to meet her coming out. And she was coming out with a truck at that point. So after she did Z-Bond. So it was just a long day. But I think, I think establishing when we do solo stuff, unforeseen things can happen, but what would be a point at which, okay, this might be concerning versus, okay, is it just a long slog? Because I'm a slower hiker, I'm a bigger guy, but I just kind of keep moving. So I wouldn't want anyone to get alarmed prematurely if I'm just out there on something that's more than 15 miles and taking my time. But at the same time, there might be a point where it's like, okay, concern escalates to some type of action, and maybe define that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Luckily, haven't had to test that too much on my end. So, and then Stomp, you talk about putting notes in the windshields in your cars.
Yeah.
So, I did used to do this. I don't do this as much.
I don't. I definitely don't. I just get paranoid that somebody may read the note and say, "Oh, I have plenty of time to take that catalytic converter."
Yeah.
That is an unfortunate reality. It seems like we've seen a rash of break-ins the last few years now, like ever since COVID, where hiking's exploded and popularity has exploded of being outdoors. So it has the unfortunate other side of opportunistic people trying to, do things like break into cars at trailheads and stuff like that. And
right.
It's awful. And I think the same thought has crossed my mind. Like, I don't want to give them an open-ended timeline to start.
Let's come back after lunch.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then the last on my list here for the pre-hike was hiker and climber logs. I'm familiar with them at, say, the Cannon Cliffs lot for climbers, and also at Joe Dodge Lodge at Pinkham. You have a register you can sign in. Definitely do that. Sign in, and when you come out, sign out so that they know where you're going and when you came in, and if you haven't come out. So that's always a good thing to do as well.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I think that's very important. And then sure enough, the last time I went to Baxter this past year, I forgot to sign both in and out going up the route we took, which was going up Hamlin and coming down Saddle. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, crap. Okay, well, at least I didn't sign in and not sign out, I suppose. It's pretty worse, but I try to be better with that.
Yeah, and when you're bushwhacking too, like those canisters there, like, put your name on there, just in case, you never know.
Right. So what do you do on hike? There are 3 or 4 categories. You have cell phones, not so much aware of what Androids can do, but the iPhone has new and developing features. There's the iPhone Emergency SOS, which is a fairly hefty price, but apparently it's satellite connected. You do have your basic satellite messengers, such as Garmin's InReach units, the GPS handhelds, a few other companies, Zoleo satellite communicator. You have the Spot X, which has been around for quite a long time, and Somewhere Global Hotspot. These things will let you communicate, whether it's a text or a pre-programmed message. That's always handy. And then, of course, you have your PLBs, which I have for my bushwhacking. And PLBs, personal locator beacons, are basically just help me buttons. They're SOS buttons. No communication. They're saying, I'm effed, come and get me, I'm in trouble. And the two most popular ones that you'll see are the ACR Rescue Link, which runs about $400. The battery life on it lasts about 5 years, and every year you get a free renewal. You just have to fill a form out, and the government will send you out a new registration form. And then also the Ocean Signal Rescue Me PLB1 is a newer one that offers that same help me feature. And then, of course, Rocky Talkies. Mike, you added this one.
Yeah. So I added this. Matter of fact, I was talking with. So we talk about Littlefoot for the listeners that don't know where Littlefoot is. I think she's 7 years old, so she's doing the grid at this point, and she's almost finished with her winter 4,000 footers, and she hikes with her grandparents and a great crew of people, Rhonda and Joanne and George and everybody. Matter of fact, I saw them this weekend. And Kim, her grandmother, had told me, she's like, you should check these out. You should mention them on the show. They're called Rocky Talkies, and they use them. So I guess they all carry them, and they have about a mile worth of range. So if you are hiking with people, we always tell people to stick together, but sometimes if you're hiking in a group where the pace doesn't match up, you can utilize these Rocky Talkies and stay in contact if you need to. So something wherever to happen, somebody took a wrong turn on a trail, you can communicate in a pretty far distance.
Okay, so that was my question. So do we have an idea what the distance is?
I think she said a mile.
Maybe like a mile? Yeah. A mile? Okay, yeah. That's pretty handy.
Yeah, so I'll check. Excellent. I'll put the link in the show notes so people can check it out. But she said she was very impressed with them.
Yeah, excellent. All right, and then finally, post-hike, if you let people know where you are, just let them know when you're out. Text them, send them an email, call them, whatever. Send a satellite message on your Garmin, and definitely check out and log out of those books and registers at the trailheads when they're available. So pretty simple post-hike.
Yeah. Do you guys? I don't know if you guys remember this story, but there was a guy that hiked. He was a professor, I think, in Boston, and he had been out hiking. He was staying at the Omni, and he didn't bother to text his wife.
Oh yeah,
right. And then she called 911. She's like, my husband was hiking, he disappeared. They're out there looking on. I think he was maybe on the Jewel Trail or something. So they're out there looking for this guy, and it turns out that he was just having a spa day at the Omni. And
oh my God,
that's funny.
Classic. So, yeah, you don't want to be that guy,
no.
Right?
I mean, enjoy your spa day, but text your wife.
Yeah, I'm off trail, I'm all good, even if it's just short and sweet. Something.
My wife would kill me. She'd kill me.
Yeah,
I triggered a search and rescue for you.
Yeah,
that would be bad. I'd have to find a new co-host. Andy, you'd be the co-host with me, and Mike would be toast.
Yeah. All right. Well, Andy, this was awesome, super fascinating. Would love to have you on again. Maybe if your girlfriend wants to come on, we can talk hiking a little bit more.
She would love to.
Yeah. We'll stay in touch for sure. But Stomp, anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah,
thank you guys very much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASRPodcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega. Peace.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hell!
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared. And I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at